all of us as Black people must participate in turning the future into what we all believe and know that it should be. A planet and a universe where there is justice. Justice does not exist on planet Earth today. This planet, whether we like it or not, is dominated by the greatest system of injustice, the greatest system of violence that has ever existed on this planet. I believe that we as Black people, the first people assigned to planet Earth, the mothers and fathers of everybody who has existed on this planet, that it is our cosmic assignment in the presence of injustice, see that justice prevails. Not the responsibility of some singular individuals that somebody might say that's a leader, or those several people are leaders. We all must see ourselves individually when we look in the mirror as being leaders in this great counter war against injustice. Not leaders who are doing their own thing, but leaders who want to participate in seeing that the beings on this planet can be everything that the Creator intended for us to be.
My mental notes for this morning is about the serious business of being serious. And oppressed people, realizing the nature of their oppression and not being able to face it frontally, generally began to fantasize and create a world for themselves that is unreal, while the real world marches on and sometimes leaves them behind.
Know that since 1970, I have been making a statement about what I understand to be what is going on. And I have been saying to people that we as Black people greet each other by saying what's happening. And I say we put that greeting in the form of a question because we don't really understand yet what's going on. And so after today, I hope that we will be greeting each other by saying, you do know what's happening, don't you?
Here, and go through this kind of abuse and attack that I have to go through in order to try to reunite the Black man and the Black woman in America based on somebody else's appeal or suggestion or anything else. See, this is a painful process, but the digestive process is threefold. You have to first take the medicine in. You have to swallow it and let the nutrients go throughout the system, and then you have to have elimination. So we're in the process of eliminations, and my lectures are a major success because we address those things. We get that pain out, and we deal with the fact that our man has been hurting. Certainly we are hurting, and we're all in pain, but we have to come back together on that issue and try to work it out. I don't like the picture in the book. It's an ugly picture, but we have an ugly problem that we have been turned into as a result of living here in white America. Many of us do not have knowledge or information and education that can benefit the larger community. What I'm saying is that we have mixed up our priorities. We cannot go outside the home and correct it until we correct the problems we have inside the home. So our being out of control is that we have refused to allow and accept the Black man to give us any direction on anything we're doing. Just like the Black man's failure and his impotence to function in this society, that's not innate. This is something that has been bred into us since we have come to this country. What we need to do now is to recognize, where we are, and for us sisters, not to fight me, if you are not guilty of the things that I charge in my book, I need you to get on my side and to help me raise these other sisters.
Jefferson, and in the close of my book, the soliloquy of Thomas Jefferson was fully aware of what the impact of the long-term impact of enslavement would be on white people and black people and everybody in between that were confused. He talked about the horror associated with slave masters did, and that their children imitated the behavior among their friends and younger children that were enslaved, and that built into a sickness on the part of Europeans and a hatred and antipathy on the part of Africans. And his greatest fear is that it would end in extermination of one or the other race. He says, because God cannot side with us, meaning Europeans, in this contest. He cannot side with us, which means God will side with them. And it is only his hope. He says, indeed, I tremble for my country when I consider that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. So Thomas Jefferson not only knew at the time the wrongness associated, but recognized the long-term impact that it would have. Clearly, these are his words. I'm not making this up. But again, it somehow gets absent of the curriculum. Somehow it gets removed, and we talk about all the other things that he was able to expound upon. And I think that if we're talking about healing, if we're talking about a response, we have to look and understand historically how the injury transmitted itself, what it looks like then, now, and then contrast that with Africa.
How can there be any healing if you don't get the right medicine?
First of all, here's how it's got to start. It's got to start with unearthing the truth.
He must learn to be tough if he's going to make it. If it's an environment that requires him to hustle, then he's got to learn how to hustle. And he's got to learn how to... And yet, after he learns all of these things, they're going to become a part of his personality. And in ways they're going to help him, and in ways they're going to stand against him. And therefore, if I create the environment, I can, to a good extent, create the individual. And therefore, the people in power will read this statement and they will go back to their planning boards and say, how can I create the environment such that black people will be dumb? They will be ignorant. They will hate themselves. They will lack disunity in their relationships one with the other. They will see me as the final validator of truth. They will see my acceptance as the ultimate acceptance. How can I create in them that mentality? And you will see them then creating the appropriate environment. The invasion of this community by Asians and other ethnic groups is a part of the creation of the mentality and personality of black people. It's going to create your children out here. As they walk down these blocks, their personality is being formed as they learn to so-called cope and deal with this situation out here. And to the extent that we sit back and let it happen, to that extent, we're participating also in their creation. It goes on to say, for social learning theorists, behavior is the result of a continuous interaction between personal and environmental variables. Environmental conditions shape behavior through learning. A person's behavior, in turn, shapes the environment. It's a reciprocal relationship. We create the environment and we create a behavior orientation. And then the person with the behavior orientation, recreates his environment. You put him in a slum, and then he develops slummy behavior. And then once he develops slummy behavior, he will make slums wherever he goes. And then we will say that he's a slummy person by nature.
Okay, hood stands for hustle, obey, no matter where you go throughout the diaspora, young people identify themselves where they live. I live in the hood. You ever notice in the songs they will call out their area codes? They say, I ride and die for my block. That's a lie. That's foolish thinking. When the majority of our people are renting property, you don't even own the property. You ride and die for it. When you say hood, hood is also the prefix to the term hoodlum. Hoodlum means gangster. Hip-hop or subculture hip-hop, not all hip-hop is bad. Subculture hip-hop promotes the gangster, the criminalization, right? And so it's not a mistake that the so-called hood or criminal kills the neighbor. So we should say we live in a neighborhood, we live in a community. And the word community is the term's common unity. But we're so disenfranchised, so discombobulated. We say we live in the hood. So I say hood stands for hustle, obey, or die. Say it backwards, die obeying the hustle. You can't win or lose.
I grieve today over the death of my mother because she died of a disease that was unnecessary. People don't even die of it anymore, called pellagra. Pellagra is a diet deficiency. All she had to do to cure herself is to eat. Now, as a kid, 7 and 8, or less than that, I noticed my mother serving everybody, making sure everybody got it. You got a little more, you got a little more. And she, what's left in the pot, she'll take that and she'd never sit down. I did not know she was killing herself. And I go to the hospital and stinking wooden Jim Crow hospital. I hate hospitals to this day. She asked for a drink of water. I tried to get it for her. And a white nurse told me, boy, you don't work here. She'll get water when I say she was boss of the black nurses who wouldn't give her a drink of water. Do you think I will forgive the society that killed my mother? Then how can I be asked to give, and how can I expect South Africans who suffered more to forgive? Let's be real. All of this talk about African liberation, all the libations and the ceremony, it don't mean nothing unless you are willing to work for the liberation of African people. That to work for the liberation of African people, you've got to be serious. You've got to be able to face the truth.
That's what it is. It's a con game. They've used that same strategy throughout history. They've devastated and literally wiped other non-white people off the planet through interracial sex. And they're doing the same thing today. So that's really why the book came about as a separate book.
What do you see, like specifically, that makes you conclude that this is the single most divisive issue between black males and black females, the ethnic integration?
Well, one thing is very lopsided. Black women in general, I think, do less of it. Black women in general, perhaps for a multitude of reasons. But the one thing I would always give people this example, and that is try to imagine, and I like to use these two groups as examples because I think it's relevant for today. Try to imagine the Israelis and the Palestinians in a vicious war, which they are right now. Palestinian people getting the worst of it. Palestinian children dying, the villages being bombed, their economies, there is no real economy, just suffering. And then the women and children are there, and they're suffering. The men are getting killed in the war. And so the women and children overwhelmingly are having to fend for themselves. And then walk into the village, the men with Israeli women, in the midst of the bloodshed, in the midst of the chaos and the turmoil and pain, to bring these Israeli women home and tell the Palestinian women to accept it. Now, in my mind, if I laid that premise out to anybody, every response that I've gotten has been, oh, that's messed up. Yeah, so we can see that when it's somebody else. But we're in the midst of a war right now. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is just on black men, but I'm just giving an illustration of how it appears to me from my point of view. And what I'm saying is, how can you not breed hostility? And not just that, black men, again, will look at black women doing whatever it is we do, and then, you know, we are sleeping with white men. So the black man, in my understanding, based on what I've been told by black men, they look at the white man and you're sleeping with the enemy. Now, the white male is devastating black men, shooting them down like dogs, won't hire them, all this stuff, and then I come home, I show up with a white man. So I'm just saying that, or say the Palestinian woman. These Palestinian men are out there on the line fighting, and the Palestinian woman says, I don't care about the war. I just want to have some sex. And this Israeli guy looks good. What I'm saying is it's divisive, and in the midst of that war, the Palestinian people are hungry, they're cold, they're hurting, but they understand that it's a war, and they understand that that's part of what's happening. But the personal thing, bringing in the relationship and the bedroom thing, is a whole nother element of betrayal.
From under white domination. The worst idea ever conceived that has been implemented is wicked white world terror domination. That's the worst idea that anyone ever thought of and implemented. The greatest idea thought of but not yet implemented is black liberation from the white domination.